providers in an attempt to try and make them do a better job. Right, I'll stop the ads now and move on to our next group. Thank you so much for your time you've taken to prepare what you said, because I know it's very hard to condense everything you want to say into a small amount of time. So thank you, and thank you once again for the amazing work that you're doing, supporting people that are trying to survive on income support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would now like to invite our next group, which is Avery, Emma, if you are here, I think you are, and Sarah. Do we have Emma?
Hello.
Hello, hi. And do we have, sorry, I've said it should be Sahara. Do we have Sahara?
I don't think she made it on.
Okay, all right. Well, what I will do is, Avery, you're on the top of the list, so I'll invite you to share your experiences, and then I'll go to Emma.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Avery, and I'm a full-time university student. I receive youth allowance payments to help supplement the income I receive from my casual job as a youth events assistant. I don't get many shifts on that job, and I was stood down from it in March 2020. So I was grateful for the introduction of the coronavirus supplement to help me pay for my bills. If passed, the changes set out in this bill will unnecessarily and intentionally put myself and over 1.7 million people currently on job seeking and student payments well below the poverty line. The government needs to reconsider the rate that it is introducing in this bill, increasing it to at least the Henderson poverty line of $80 per day. Anything less deprives us of the dignity we deserve as humans, and dignity does not come from poverty. I myself grew up in a tumultuous household. My mother was a single parent, raising 4 children by herself whilst on the single rate of the parenting payment. The essentials were hard to pay for, and she had to rely heavily on charity to help us get through school and be able to afford food. Several incidents between us led to a strain in our relationship, and one particular incident resulted in me moving in with my father. During the 2 years I lived with him, it became unsafe as he was physically and emotionally abusive towards me. Trying to escape that, I ended up in a youth refuge and have been living in insecure housing since. Living on the maximum independent rate of youth allowance has made it incredibly difficult to survive. The stress of not having enough money for the bare essentials is astronomical and has made my existing mental health conditions worse. I have had to forego medication, groceries, and any leisure activities to be able to afford my regular bills. Studying whilst on the rate has also been difficult. When class was on campus, I would have to calculate what classes I could feasibly miss or try and have all of my classes on a few days because of the cost of travel. Even on a concession rate, the cost of public transport was incredibly expensive and took a large portion of my budget. When the supplement was introduced, the stress of having to obsessively count all of my money had immediately gone away. I was able to decide where my money went. It allowed me to save up to move out of the community housing when my lease was ending. Even just having money in my savings account was a relief. It was amazing and was basically the first time I had lived above the poverty line. Whilst things were easier, they were not great. I still needed to keep track of my money, but not obsessively. Currently, with the coronavirus supplement at $150 per fortnight, I am struggling. I got paid yesterday, and after I paid my rent, bills, and basic groceries, I have about $14 for everything else until next fortnight. I am skipping meals every day. I eat about once per day. Anything more is too expensive. I already have large amounts of stress when it comes to my money and managing it. I budget almost obsessively because I have to. I run out of money almost every fortnight. I am not bad at budgeting. I just do not have enough money. I fear what will happen when the coronavirus supplement ends completely. My payments get cut by $100 per fortnight. I know I will continue to struggle to survive. I am worried by how much more difficult it will be. The changes in this bill still put youth allowance at less than half of the Henderson poverty line. How am I supposed to study, find work, and survive when I am being forced into poverty by my own government? These cuts, masquerading as an increase, will cause significant pain and harm to myself and the many others that require these payments as our form of survival. We only want dignity, and poverty does not give us dignity. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. I'll go to Emma now and then come back and ask you some questions. Emma?
Hello, sorry. I'd just like to say I'm a single parent on single parent payments, and it's been quite an eye opener to hear from the first three people who have all grown up with single parents. I've taken myself to university to learn about the effects on child development that me being a single parent is going to have on my children. It's been hard. I've actually had to hand over care of my oldest son due to being homeless, and just simply not being able to provide what's best for him. He now lives with me. We got back into a stable house. We're all doing quite well now, but I do acknowledge that the strain of poverty has a major impact on the things that my family and hundreds of other families, thousands even, will experience in their lives, and how it shapes who they become. I think that nobody deserves to worry about what they're going to eat. No child, no mother, no person in general. It's been really hard. I've been struggling with this for about 8 years now. We do okay now. That's mainly due to the increase in payments that were brought about by the coronavirus supplement. I was able to afford healthcare, replace furniture, where I budget quite hard as well. As Avery mentioned, you have to, just to stay afloat. My budget was always in a deficit until that coronavirus supplement came. And I made the most of that and got as far in front as I could, because I knew it was not going to last. During that time, I was able to socialise with parents at my child's school, and gain the confidence to kind of explain to them my situation, because I always felt out of place. I wasn't discussing mortgages. I wasn't discussing work. These are things that I'm not a part of. And when they realised that someone that they saw as an equal was living the way that I was, they were quite shocked. They couldn't tell, because my children have everything they need. They don't go without, but I haven't bought clothing for myself in 5 years. I will buy something to wear when there is nothing else. There are ways to make it work, but I just feel like everyone shouldn't have to go without. These basic necessities should be covered, and having a payment that reflects that in the current economy is so important. And that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Emma, thank you so much for sharing your very personal experiences. Emma, if I can just ask you, and Avery, you both talk about budgeting, and yet one of the things that you constantly hear from government is people have to be better at budgeting, which I've always just thought was insulting, given that when you're on a small amount of money, you just have to be good at budgeting. And in fact, I think you could probably teach other, people that have more money how they could budget, because you've got the experience. How many times have you been told that you should be better at budgeting?
Oh, I've lost count. The thing is, for me, the services were offered directly from Centrelink. So I was referred to my local financial service. They showed me how to access the websites and how to do these things for myself. The help is out there. The problem is that a lot of people simply don't know how to ask for it. And at the end of the day, you can use those budgeting tools, but when that comes back in a deficit every time, it is the simple fact that you just don't have money. And I'm talking I had the bare minimum. I was spending $70 a week feeding myself and 2 children. That's not a lot of money to work with. During the coronavirus supplement at its peak, I upped that to $120. I have photos of my kids' lunch boxes. They were going to school with fresh fruit and vegetables every day instead of just on the days around when I got paid. You know, they had fresh bread for sandwiches. They had a higher quality diet. These are things that can't be met when your budget is in deficit from the get-go.
Yeah. Avery, did you want to add
Yeah.
anything?
I mean, I absolutely can agree as well. It's I've been asked, like I've been told to budget better. And then I show them, I have spreadsheets, like meticulous spreadsheets of everything. I make sure like I'm in the supermarket with a calculator, making sure I don't go over my budget. I'm trying as hard as I can. It's not the fact that I need to know how to budget better, because I can try to budget as much as I like, but if I don't have enough money, then all the budgeting in the world is not going to help.
Can I, you both mentioned what an impact the doubling the payment made. Could I ask both of you what difference that makes to your sense of well-being, of being able to eat? You know, you've both talked about missing meals, so being able to eat better. What it does to have even a little bit of money in the bank, because you talk about savings and paying off debts. How does it affect your sense of well-being, having that extra money, and then how you can then engage? Emma, you described how you could engage and socialise. Could I ask both of you just to explore that a little bit?
Do you want to go first this time, Avery?
Yeah, I'm fine with either. I guess now I'm speaking, I'll go first. I noticed, at least for myself, it was a significant improvement in my overall mental and just physical well-being with the coronavirus supplement. I could, as you mentioned, I could afford to buy food that was better for me, so I didn't have to buy all the cheap stuff at Aldi that was like, and I could like afford to get fresh fruit and vegetables. But it on top of that, it was sort of, it removed a lot of the stress that I had with money. So like it meant that I didn't have to look at my budget every second of the day. I didn't have to think about money. I could just sort of exist without that stress. And that was like, it was quite freeing. It, as I mentioned, even having just a bit of money in my savings account was a huge relief to me, because I'd never had money in my savings account before. There was no money to go into that savings account. So sort of to have even a bit of like a safety net there for me, if anything came up that was out of the regular, was really helpful to me and my like mental health and everything.
Thank you. Emma?
Yeah, that's all massively relevant stuff. What I'm thinking in response to your question is about primarily mine and my children's physical health. I suffer from chronic conditions in my joints from a time that I spent homeless. I found that just being able to afford proper food, and at the time I could also actually afford physiotherapy, I actually became so much more physically fit and healthy just from being able to eat enough and have the right medical treatments, that I actually gained employment for the first time in 10 years. It wasn't lasting employment, it was just a temporary position. But I could actually, I struggle to leave the house because I can't walk properly. And just being able to eat what my body required and do physical therapy allowed me to actually do that, to run around the park with my kids from their point of view as well, they actually gained weight being able to eat healthier foods and more often. My kids eat 3 meals a day. It's just mainly not the greatest things. We do beans on toast a lot. We do cereal for dinner. We do things that I personally don't think kids should have to do. It's a fun thing that you do every now and then. But during that time when we had the coronavirus supplement and the effectively doubled rate of income support, I could feed my children meat, vegetables, and healthy things every night, not just once a week. And I think that's a basic thing that all children deserve, every child. Yeah.
Thank you both so much for sharing deeply personal experiences, but also giving us a really, really important insight to what the difference to the supplement means and what it's like living on so far below the poverty line on the old rate. And unfortunately, the new rates just is, as we all know, $3.57 extra a day. It's not going to provide the benefits that obviously have flowed from that significant increase through the coronavirus supplement. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I now please invite our next group, which is Lana, Sophie and Karen, who have...
Yep, just a second. Hey.
Hi.
Is the microphone working there?
Yes, it is.
I'm just going to go turn a lamp on because I'm right on Charles Street. It's really loud, so I can't open my window.
Okay.
I don't think we have Sophie unless she's come on. So we've got Karen and Lana for this one, I think.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. So
yeah, I actually know
right.
Sophie. That was funny.
Okay, so can I and Karen, I'm sure, where's Karen gone? Oh, there. Sorry. I was looking to the spot on my screen where you were previously. Welcome and thank you for agreeing to share your experiences with us. Lana, can I invite you to kick off because you're top of my list? And then Karen, I'll come to you and then I'll ask you a few questions if that's okay.
Yeah. So for me, I am a musician in a lot of I do a lot of transporting of things, like I transport things on public transport. And then I also have chronic pain. So I did the niece things through Centrelink. So there are some great things through Centrelink, I think, that do exist. And they allow me to be a musician, but unfortunately, sometimes it gets to late at night when I realize that my Centrelink has suddenly run out and I'll be trying to get a train or something coming from a gig and there'll just be no money. Essentially with timing, when it's so little, when you've got so little money, the timing sometimes doesn't work out. So you're waiting to get your birth control pill for me at the end of the month or something, and my nerve pain medication for my chronic pain. So I have rheumatoid arthritis and it's another reason why it's hard to get jobs. So I was working at a nut selling place in Coles and I'd have to bend over constantly. And eventually that just didn't work out for me. So being a musician works really well. But yeah, essentially for the last 3 days of the fortnight, I'm not eating. I don't eat lunch. It just works out financially better that way, basically. And going and seeing specialists like rheumatologists is very expensive at the end of the day. Some things aren't really covered. And unfortunately, everyone else you fall back on friends and things, like your emotional state ends up affecting everyone. It's not just like people who are on Centrelink, everyone else has to suffer. I think that basically just a little bit more would be nice. Just a bit more would be nice for people who are struggling with chronic fatigue and chronic pain, especially if you can't get your medication because it's just lined up wrong, then you'll be having panic attacks. And then mental health is also expensive once you run out of the free mental health care plan things. So that's my story. I have fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, from like an accident a while ago. So I have like nerve pain and stuff, and getting jobs is always really challenging, but I really want to work, like, but I also would love to get on disability, and that's also impossible with things like fibromyalgia and stuff like that. They're just like, no, that doesn't exist. Anyway, yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Karen?
Okay, it's been a very long journey, and I'll just summarise it all I've just written down and I'll just read it out to keep me on track. Okay, so my name is Karen and I'm a resident of Sydney. I had a great job in my 30s and 40s as a personal assistant and then became redundant. I'm now in my early 50s. I have great skills and experience, but I've had real difficulties finding ongoing work. I've taken a number of short courses over the years. I've had 3 interviews in the past year, but no luck landing a job. Not even the $10,000 government reimbursement incentive written at the top of my resume seems to help. I'm very worried about the proposed $25 increase. While it's something, it's still not sufficient to cover rent, bills, medication, pharmaceuticals, cleaning products, personal grooming and healthy food. In the past, I lived in boarding houses and found it impossible to afford a single room. I ended up couch surfing, and I now live in secure housing. I have a partial work capacity and I need prescription medication for migraine. My migraines become more frequent when I'm on edge. After paying rent and necessary bills, there's hardly anything to eat properly or take proper care of myself. I used to stay home more than I would have liked to because I didn't have the money to socialise. I often refused invites to local cafes and restaurants, which could have led to possible leads simply because I was too embarrassed about not paying my way. And the thought of going back to that kind of isolation is heart-wrenching. I know this is not the consensus for all of Australia, but it is for many. When we're told that an increase to Jobseeker is a disincentive to work, and there are plenty of jobs, that's just a fanciful opinion and it's hurtful, because I, for one, have been trying to get a job. I've applied for well over 1,000 jobs and interviewed and done all that. And guess what? I still find it hard getting a job, even though there's only one position and over 600 people applying for it. Places like Seek used to let me know how many candidates applied for the role, but in recent months they have suppressed that feedback. When I called them and asked why the change, they said based on their feedback, the actual details of applicants was discouraging people from looking for work. Older workers and long-term unemployment, like people like myself, it seems like an endless hamster wheel. It's discouraging because many employers prefer to hire younger people. And with all those inbuilt penalties and punishments, it just doesn't work. It doesn't help us get a job. It just makes it even harder to compete. And I really feel that only unity and concern can minimise or reduce underemployment and the poverty rates. And only compassion and respect can open doors for those who need a hand up. And we can only move forward together if we genuinely care about the next person. That's how I see it.
Thank you for sharing your experiences. And I'd like to ask you the first question. You said you'd applied for 1,000 jobs.
Over 1,000. Yes.
Over 1,000.
Because I've been long-term unemployed. Yes. Well over 1,500 actually.
And
Over the period of time, and still, you know, like it's not the same. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I used to get offered jobs very quickly, and sometimes I have a choice of 2 and 3 jobs that I could pick from. And I had a job for almost 10 years. Then I became redundant about mid-40s. And I just assumed that it was going to be easy, you know, because I'd always pretty much found it easy to find work when I was younger, and I thought it was easy, going to continue on being easy. But even have done in courses and being an experienced person, even with the $10,000 government incentive written in bold at the top of my resume, you'd think people would jump at the chance of hiring someone with, you know, with reasonable experience and a government incentive, but no, it doesn't. It's not working.
And so when government says there's plenty of work, as you've just articulated, there's plenty of work out there, but SEEK has actually, as you've just articulated, turned off the number of people who've applied.
Yes.
It just lays that open as just absolute nonsense.
Well, because SEEK were one of the few people that could provide factual evidence of just how many people are applied for jobs.
Yeah.
Prior to them cutting it off, I was easily getting over 1,000, even 2,000 applicants for one job. And I've still got copies of those, and I was going to print them out and show them to whoever wanted to look at this feedback. And all of a sudden, SEEK decides to suppress in the name of privacy. It's the company's privacy. It's up to them if they want to reveal that information. And the other excuse they had was from their feedback that it's disencouraging people to find work. And so it's the absolute opposite of what the government's saying, that not enough people applying for work. From my perspective, on the other end of the spectrum, you know, like with office type work I'm talking about, that field, there's just too many people are applying for those sort of jobs.
Lana, what's been your experience with trying to apply for jobs in the current market?
I guess sometimes life does get a little bit busy throwing you things. So you're always applying for lots of jobs, but sometimes you just don't keep up to date with it, and you get like one day off, and then it's like into panic spiral zone because you're just one day off. So I would apply for like sometimes 30 jobs in one day. I'd just be like, bam, bam, bam. Yep. All of these waitress jobs, you know, like I also do carer. I'm also like trying to get carers work, and it's been really hard. So I've got all the qualifications: first aid, working with children, police clearance, did the allied health course at TAFE. You know, I've got all the qualifications, and it's been months of me being like, hey, I've got this now, I've done this, and I'd love to get work. And they're going like, yeah, do you want to do this retail thing instead? So there's a bit of a mismatch, I think. There's like, you have all these qualifications and sometimes they just go to waste. It feels like I have a background in music, and I've had prac at all these different places now. It'd be great to go into healthcare, especially with the pandemic and everything going on. Like, it'd just be great to get some experience. It's a perfect time. And yeah, with all this, like, Cert 4 music, part bachelor, I had to drop out at the end because I had the rheumatoid diagnosis that I was going through. But yeah, applying for jobs, I'm applying for heaps of these kinds of jobs, and there's a lot of silly jobs as well, like, and the a lot of the times the actual website itself messes up and you won't get the right thing come up, and then you have to call them up, and it's like, well, we're going to put your payment on suspension. And then if you have anxiety, which a lot of people on Centrelink do
Yes.
have anxiety, we have inside jokes about getting that Centrelink email about someone posted today like, hey guys, you got a new start email, don't worry, it's not bad. It was a good one, because a lot of people just have whole panic attacks when they get an email being like, you've messed up.
Yeah.
It's so scary thinking you might not be able to pay for, things like medication for pain. Some people have epilepsy medication. Some things are just like not that easy to get, and you are living dollar to dollar, because that's how little you're getting. You're living like, you're going like, I can't afford $3, I can't throw that away.
Yeah. You also made the point, Lana, about not being able to, well, how I interpret what you said about your rheumatologist is you can't afford to go to your rheumatologist when you need to.
Yeah.
Or would that
It's
also
about,
cut them?
it's about $300 sometimes, and then you take out a rebate, so maybe you get like $80 back or something. Also psychologist appointments, if you want a good psych. And that's the thing, if you want good healthcare. So for someone who's been dealing with chronic pain for maybe 6 or 7, about 10 years now, I've had it since, like, it's a confusing conversation where doctors are gaslighting or accidentally gaslighting me, being like, it's in your head and stuff. So you need really expensive, good care for complicated disorders, like whatever I've got. Like, you need to spend all the money going and getting the stuff and the medication, and then you get people selling you stuff that isn't real and it doesn't work. So you get sucked into different spirals as someone who deals with rheumatoid or chronic pain or fatigue.
Well, and your rheumatoid, if it's not being treated, if you can't afford to go to the rheumatologist and get the proper treatment, it also then feeds into your fibromyalgia, as I understand it as well.
Yeah, that's true. They're really related. And yeah, it'll be it's a big investigation, essentially, just into like the world itself doesn't understand much about fibromyalgia or chronic pain, so let alone Australian doctors. And so then, yeah, you are spending a lot of money to find out a lot about stuff, and some people are just saying, no, you just need to see a psych, and then that's other money as well. Like, so there's a whole bunch of other specialists, podiatrists even.
But I also have a chronic pain thing too. I had 3 specialists refer me to what do you call it, chronic pain clinic.
Yep.
And I've done the course twice. So I do understand, everything that you said about the pain and fibromyalgia, whatever, I can't pronounce it. But I get it, but not probably as bad as you. It's like everything with migraine, it's not just a throbbing headache and nausea. It's like everything is magnified times 10.
Yeah,
like,
I get the migraines for like a week.
Touch the skin and it feels like scratching. It's I really don't want to go into it all.
But But migraines are a big thing because they stop you from working as well. So even if you had work, there needs to be a certain amount of flexibility from a Centrelink's perspective. If you're desperate for a job, but you have that week-long migraine, migraines, I have them, they go for like a week, sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes.
That's the thing is, like, it's not that I can't work. I have skills and I want to use the skills, because they say what you don't use, you lose.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just the reason I lasted 10 years in this as a personal assistant, and I thrived in that environment because I was using my skills, but also because I had a flexible, he was flexible. He was a bit sympathetic. He had a daughter that had period pain. Not that it's that, but he had a bit of sympathy, and he understood that these things just come and go.
Yeah.
I had is there any chance there was just like one extra little mini story that I had when I was looking for jobs, and It's make it very short, but it was very bad in like a warehouse.
I have to move on to next.
Yeah. Sorry. Anyway, there was actually, it's International Women's Day yesterday, and there was a man in a job who had harassed me and had been like, oh, if you do right, by me, you keep the job, wink, wink. And he said stuff like, he called me in the afternoon and stuff. And this was through Centrelink, getting this job. And eventually at the end of the day, I lost it, and I told Centrelink about it and everything. And I had shown up and tried to get a different time and everything. So through getting these jobs, I've had multiple men who have harassed me, asking me, when was the last time you'd been spanked when I dropped a glove? on the floor. He asked me. And so when I went back to my Centrelink work helper, the job search people, they were like, oh, that's terrible. We can't do anything about it. We'll just get you a different job, basically. Yeah, it was a great job. I would have loved it, actually.
That is just outrageous.
Yeah.
I think we need to, it's a whole nother area that actually.
That's another thing.
Well, I'm not trying to put it on. I'm saying we have to
Yeah.
pursue that, because that is just outrageous. And it also then, links into the new mutual obligation provision they've put in place. Whereas if you so-called don't accept a job, that's exactly what, people have been saying. It just leaves it, and we've all been saying, leaves it open to harassment. Now, that is exactly an example of that. Thank you for sharing that. That was really important to hear about, and we need to follow that up.
Thank you, Rachel.
Rachel, I was offered a job during the coronavirus, and I was happy to do it working from home. But then what ended up happening was really, really strange experience. Over a period of 1 month, I kept saying I'm available to start, but they never put the information in my computer so that I could do anything. I kept making excuses. And after about 3 times, I said to my job provider, I've lost my confidence working with these people. They're not sticking to it. And the job provider just said, just be patient, be patient. And finally, I had to go to the doctor, and I kept a record. 10 times they mucked me around. And my job provider was coercing me to, just be patient, be patient. I said, this is just, I understand bending over backwards, but this is just humiliating, like they say, you can't just not accept the job. And in the end, I had to get doctor's certificate to say that, she supports my decision not to work for that company.
Yeah.
I think, can we follow that can we follow that up offline as well? Because that's an example of another really good example of what happens. I'm going to have to move on to the next group. Okay. Sorry, we're going to run out of time. So, but I do want to, those are examples that we need to be following up. So,
yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. This is what the Senate Committee, it's exactly why we need to hold this, so we can understand what's happening out there. And it's a shame that I'll share during the debate as much as I can. But the whole of this, the Senate, whole of the Senate Committee should have been hearing this sort of information. So thank you so much for sharing. I know it takes a lot to be able to share your lived experience. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Can I now invite Marianne, Philip and Ricky are in our next group. I know I've got, you're all here. I can see you all.
Yeah, yep.
Marianne, you are you are the first on my list. So would you like to, can I invite you to share your experiences?
Yes, sure. Thank you for asking me to be on here. I live alone on 300 acres, about 50 kilometres from the nearest town, 110 kilometres from a big centre. And I ended up on Jobseeker because of a violent marriage breakup. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to look for work because I was so far away. So I joined NICE and did the course for that and started. But unfortunately, COVID's happened just as I'd finished like the first part of NICE. So the business did not take off at all. I'm one of the few people who actually enjoyed COVID with the extra supplement. Because I live so far out of town, I have to have a car. I also pay a mortgage. So when it's on the lower rate, I can only go to town once a week. And I do that because I volunteer at an art gallery. Because I'm almost 58, because I'm over 55, I can do my mutual obligation as volunteering. But if I do it totally through the job network, I have to go twice a week, which I can't afford. So I volunteer 1 day a week, and I'm also studying a Bachelor of Arts, which satisfies mutual obligation. When I had the extra money, I was able to go to town a little bit more, actually socialise, and I was also able to get up to Mackay to see my children a bit more often. When I was on the lowest rate, not only like I had an abusive marriage, so I was sort of struggling mentally with that, but just because you're struggling so much with what do I pay, how do I pay, whatever, it's very hard to get motivated to do anything at all. It's just kind of easier to just sit. Whereas with the extra money, I found that I was motivated and started the studying. I've done enough artwork actually over the COVID period that I've started to make a little bit of money from it, which is very helpful. And I'm not looking forward to it going back to the lower rate, because I know that when I'm struggling like to pay everything, that will I lose motivation? Will I be able to just stay on top of keeping on going and doing good things for myself? Yeah. On the lower rate, I used to only eat very well once a week, so I'd spend about $30 on chicken and really good fresh vegetables and make a big crock pot, which will give me 6 to 7 meals. So that was 1 week's food, good healthy food. At 58, you've got to eat well to sort of keep going. And the second week it was, I'd eat cereal for breakfast, and that was about it. And I'm not looking forward to going back to that. So my family is really helpful. I will say that they have a lot of help through that. I was also really fortunate that I knew the system very well, because I used to work for Centrelink. So I knew the system. I knew how it worked. I knew that I could go on to Nice. I knew that volunteering was part of what I could do. And the job networks do not tell you everything that is available, because they get paid if you get into work. So they don't get paid if you take up the volunteering thing once you're over 55. So you're just a burden on their books. So they don't tell you what's available. They don't help in that circumstance. And a lot of people, I mean, I can't get permanent work or paid work doing what I'm doing, volunteering, but a lot of people who do volunteer can get paid work through that, but the job networks don't like that. They prefer you looking for jobs. Yeah. So, yeah, so COVID was wonderful. I was able to fix my car. I live in a converted shed, so I was able to get a new hot water system and a new toilet and various other things, made it much more comfortable. That'll just have to go on hold for a while. Yep.
Thank you for sharing. And I don't think you're the only one who's found COVID's been helpful, because people have appreciated the extra money. And, you know, it's ridiculous that we're going through a pandemic for people to actually be able to afford to eat properly.
Yeah.
Philip, you're next on my list.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm 60 years old, and due to a work-related back injury caused by repetitive heavy lifting and working for the company for 11 years as a casual, I was bullied and intimidated by my 2 night field managers. I ended up on stress leave until detached from the company. The disability job networks are useless, as they encourage you to do courses or apply for positions that aren't suitable duties. We have to live day to day like everyone else. We have bills to pay, day-to-day expenses, etc. The government are living in the 1990s. I mean, it's now 2021, and as costs rise with rent, food, petrol, etc., $25 a week doesn't go anywhere. It's mean-spirited, especially considering what they get and the way employment is heading. Everything's now casual and part-time. The rate shouldn't be decided by the current government. It needs to be set by an independent party who don't fudge the figures and have personal views on the unemployed. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Ricky?
Yes, I'm now on a full single age pension. I was unemployed and on New Start, what it was called then, for 3 years to 1968, so 65 to 68. My job, which was pretty high-flying community services job, working in the settlement area with refugees and migrants. I was on state, federal, regional bodies with respect to the issues that refugees and migrants face. I've written 2 Senate inquiries on a number of, more recently, the immigration disability question in 2011, I think it was, or 10. So I can write. I analyse what happens in social policy, which I had to do in my job. I had to understand what unemployment means to people. I had to understand what poor English language or no English language means to the consumers, my client group. So I'm well versed with social justice and advocacy. I wanted to be on this inquiry, Rachel, if you don't mind, because I have learned by just going through the campaign, Raise the Rate campaigners telling their stories on Facebook, on Twitter, and I compared that to my own experience. What I can say is I never had to rely on charity of any description. And suddenly I relied on the charity of my family. In that respect, I was so much more lucky than Phil, Karen, Avery, because my rent, I didn't have to pay rent, made a big difference. And even with that, due to health costs, I have diabetes 2, I have something called sarcoidosis, I have Bell's palsy, which is why my face is so ravaged. No apologies here, it's just the way it is. But that was a contributing factor. The age that I had a face where one side, as you might see, is a bit lower. And if I'm stressed, then my speech pattern also goes really bad. I applied for numerous jobs, and because I was over 55, I was able to get into the voluntary scheme. I worked 3 days a week at Addison Road Community Centre for 2 organisations. But I just want to talk about suicide ideation, and I'm sorry if I get a bit broken down here. For me, losing that job due to change in management and restructure, a job where I was actually a founding member as a volunteer, and possibly presented a threat to a new executive officer, was like losing a child. For me, I worked up to 60 hours a week. That was my child. That was who I was. It was everything I wanted to do, everything I loved to do. I had successes and I had failures. So what happened to me was that initially I thought, oh, I've got all these connections, you know, as I said, high flying, good reputation in the whole sector, but nothing. I soon realized that I wasn't going to get a job, which I found confounding. To this day, I find it confounding because the health and settlement and other community services is actually a growth industry, more, compared to others. So for me, it was a realization that with every month, every year, that opportunity dwindled into nothing. It wasn't going to happen. I had 3 small jobs, for which I'm very grateful, and I did, as I usually do, perform them with excellence and on time. But suicide ideation entered my head. No one's talked about it, but I know that again, from my connections to people out there like Karen, Avery, and others, you learn. So the suicide ideation was this. It was, well, put a plastic bag over my head. No, I can't do it here. I'm living with my brother and he has 2 children. Well, I ran my car up a pole. No, that's no guarantee. I could come up disabled. So there were others that I considered. I'm just giving you 2 examples.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about triggering.
No, it's all right.
Going into further detail.
I just would like to continue.
Yeah.
So when I wrote to you this time, Rachel, and again, thank you. I had 2 occasions where I had that opportunity. I compared my situation, apart from suicide ideation, that even though no one talked about it, it can trigger things, and so fine. But I compared my situation to everyone else, and it's once again been verified. I was comparatively lucky. I still ended up with $51 in the red, but if I needed medicine, although I'd forego it because I hated asking for more money because I lived rent-free. Eventually I lived electricity-free. Being a charitable case was horrendous. It's the worst period of my life when you start. And when I compared what I think is my horrendous period, and I listened to Avery, and I listened to Karen, and I listened to all of you that went before me, once again, I am satisfied that I was considerably lucky. What I tried to show in my latest inquiry to you, Rachel, was to show you the light and shade of the experiences that people have, hundreds of thousands of people have. And I hope I've done that successfully. And finally, I would like to say that the 3 days, 23rd, 24th, 25th, started with hope when the Senate voted 31-30 in favor of raising the rate above the poverty rate. The next day, or possibly the first day, I don't know the order, but then the announcement was made from $40 to $44. So what that means to me is, thank you very much, Mr. Morrison. You are moving us from abject poverty, from struggle, from cruelty, from callousness, to abject poverty, cruelty, callousness. So what I'd like to do today, then I heard Linda Burney, who I have great esteem for, a lot of respect. I think she's a great minister. I think, opposition spokesperson. I think, her whole life in public service has been absolutely marvelous. But she then announced that the Labor Party will support the $4 increase because they don't want to take a single dollar away. Well, I think that's a political statement. I think that'll, unless they win the election, the Labor Party wins the election, they will condemn job seekers, and by then it'll be 1.6, 1.8 million people to 4 more years of poverty. So I'd like to appeal to the Labor Party, because this is my opportunity, please bear with me, that they change their intent. They need to support a vote against this bill. If that means we go back to $40 a day, we just go back to where we were, which is abject, callous, cruel poverty. But we have a chance. as someone else said, to restructure the whole system and to get a better result. I appeal to the Labor Party, Mr. Albanese in particular, that they change their vote when it comes to voting properly on the bill in the Senate. That is why I've asked to be on. I will continue to be grateful to all the campaigners who've allowed me to participate in the advocacy work that so many hundreds of people like Karen and Avery and hundreds have done with the media, television, radio, print. And they've allowed me to be part of that. And I will continue to be part of that, whether it's $44 or $40. And I want to thank you, Rachel, in particular. Must be done. I have never seen a senator of your caliber, whether you're Green, Labour or Martian, who's put so much work into raising the issues, into making clear what the issues actually are, what the poverty actually means. So I want to pay my respect and congratulations and admiration to you. Thank you for letting me say all this.
Thank you, Vicky, and thank you for your kind words. I must admit I had a very teary moment when I heard the rate. I was devastated. I agree. It's a slap in the face. It's outrageously cruel. Can I ask the three of you, I know we've gone a bit long in this session, but I did just want to touch on the area. All of you have now been older, out of work and been out of work for a while. It seems to me we've been talking for a long time to try and address the issues of long-term unemployment and talking about older people not being discriminated against. And people then being on the low rate, what we're going back to, unemployment payments as people age into poverty. Age into the pension in poverty. How do we get this issue with all the other issues we've got to talk about? What are the key things you think we should be doing to bring this message home and to address this issue?
Shall I start on that one? Is that right?
Yeah,
well,
I know I just raised a huge issue, but
first of all, I think we need to strengthen the accountability of employers and the discrimination laws. There is no real accountability in that regard. I think 20%, most of them women, are in the 55 plus group of the unemployed. We know that the pensionable rate is going up. For instance, my brother, who's 10 years younger, will have to wait another 15 years before he might be able to receive a pension of some description. So one of the things I think that should be done, well, there's two ways you can, and I don't like separation. I advocate as much for young people as I do for older people as mature age. But one of the things that might be is to split away the 20% in some way, or to go back to reducing the freaking pensionable age to 65 for men, I remember, and I think it was 60 for women. You know, when I got mine, I'd had to be 65 and a half. I think that's one way. Strengthen the discrimination laws, put employers, make them accountable for their decisions of not employing an older employee as compared to someone else.
Okay. Thank you. Peter?
Could start, it could start with the government as well. I worked for Centrelink for many years, and I went to ask about work at the closest Centrelink and whatever, and the manager said to me, oh, the systems have all changed, and the implication was that as an older woman I wouldn't be able to handle the computer side of it.
Yes, automatic judgments, yes.
Automatic judgment. Yeah.
Thank you. Peter? Philip, sorry. I don't...
Yeah, I think they need to reduce, I think they actually need to reduce the retirement age, especially in this day and age. I mean, we've lost all manufacturing here now to China and that. I was currently diagnosed with prostate cancer, and my specialist put me on medication, which is costing me $57 a month because it's not on the PBS. Yeah, the government they just don't care. I think they just want us all to die off quietly, just go away.
Well, the other thing is when people are carers and they show you that they care for a member of the family and the evidence is clear, yet they don't meet, according to the system, the carer guidelines. They say, I know of people who've been dropped from the carers rate because the son with acquired brain disease, she got him into a boarding place. So they dropped her, but she visited him, looked after him every day and paid for the boarding place. It took her more than 12 weeks to get back onto the carer pension. The same with the disability pension. So that's one area that they could really speed up and properly assess and do.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a there are so many, you've made so many good points, all of you. Thank you so much for your time and generosity in sharing your experiences. I really appreciate it, and we'll do our best to reflect all of this back to the Senate. So
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I please now invite, we've got Jeanette, Katie and Lauren are next, and Jeanette, you're down on my list as first on the list, so could I invite you to share your experiences and whatever you want to contribute to the discussion, to the panel. Jeanette, you're on mute if you're talking. Sorry, it's a Zoom. I had to say that at some stage.
Is it? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Okay, but unfortunately, you can't hear me. I'm nearly 60. I'm 65 at the end of the year. My dilemma started when I was quite ill at work, and I had to go on sick leave because my super cut out for income protection at 60, and I had just turned 60. I had to go on Centrelink sick leave, but I had been in hospital, my lungs collapsed. Long story, I had pulmonary embolism, so I ended up in hospital over 2 weeks and came out about 2 days before, 3 days before Christmas. And they hadn't paid me at all. And that had been since October. So by the time they all came back in the January, I still hadn't received a cent in money. So I'd been doing the redraw on my mortgage, which was now getting right up. So about a week before the new year, and this is the trigger, I really decided that I'd got so many painkillers, etc. there. I was living on my own. I couldn't go out, couldn't drive, had no bread, had no milk, had no food, had nobody coming around to check on me. So I kept ringing and they kept saying, oh, yes, you're on the list. We're going to process your claim. But unfortunately, I didn't get any money until the end of February. So I started off from a position of really, I was poverty, right? Although they did back pay me, that only just caught me up with my mortgage, etc. So I don't get any extras because I live on my own. I'm 64. I also had a job assessment, so my work decided to make me redundant. So I lost my job in May of that year, the following year. And so I've been living hand to mouth. The extra money has been great. I only owe $3,500 now on my mortgage, but I can see that I have to subsidise by doing a redraw because the mortgage payments plus my strata, plus my medication, plus the doctor's appointments, etc., that I have to meet, I can't cover it all. So I have taken out some super. So now I've only got $26,000 super. So that's, I don't know if that will last me until I can get a pension. I've applied for disability, but I got knocked back because I didn't have the 20 points or something. And so I need to pay $290 to go and see a specialist to get a note to say that my condition is something or other. My doctor has been giving me some sick notes so that I haven't had to do mutual obligation. But my last sick note, she put that I had a permanent disability, that it's never going to get better. And now I have to go on mutual obligation. So I don't understand why when I'm sick, but it's not permanent, I can be not obligated to do mutual. But now that I'm permanently ill, I have to do mutual obligation.
Mutual obligations, yeah.
Yeah.
Jeanette, I reckon, we need to follow your specific case up around that. So can we make sure we've got your email and contacts, so we will chase that up, because it sounds way fishy. We'll undertake when we talk to you further to make sure we follow that up with Centrelink.
Well, they just said, they said to me that I can now be breached because I don't, but I have a job capacity assessment that said I can only work 5 hours.
You said you're 65 at the end of the year, aren't you?
Yeah, but I don't qualify for a pension until I'm 66 and 6 months.
Yes, but you also come under the, anyway, we can talk, sorry, jumping in, but we can, I don't see why they're not ensuring that you could do, voluntary work rather than looking for jobs.
Well, I have to look for 2 jobs a week, 2 jobs a month, because I actually physically can't do volunteer work because...
Right. Anyway, this is highlighting the ridiculousness of this of the system. So yes. I'll undertake that we follow this up.
Yeah. So I'm just doing as I'm told because I don't want to be breached. And
I totally understand.
After waiting nearly, I think it was like 13 weeks of no money. And then they made me wait again when I got a bit of a redundancy. So I think over a year, I only received about maybe 2 months of money. So, yeah, I don't have a car anymore. I had 2 days this week where I'd caught up on all my bills, but I didn't have any food. So and that's even with the extra. But that's only because I was so behind the 8 ball anyway, having to wait so long to receive anything.
Thank you for sharing. As you can tell, I'm speechless in terms of how cruel and ridiculous the system is. We will follow up with you to see if there's...
I ended up going to the Ombudsman, and they actually paid me about 2 weeks after I had done that. Although they said that's not going to make any difference, but I figured it's not going to make it any worse.
Any worse. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Katie, do you want, are you okay about making a contribution?
I am, yeah. Sorry, I'm feeling a bit anxious. I'll do my best. It won't be a long speech. So I guess my situation, I'm a single mum, and I've got 2 young children. So when I was on the single parenting payment for a little while, and then my youngest turned 8, so then it went on to Jobseeker, which was very, really hard time. Wasn't working, so yeah, it's the drop, and it's for the expectation for people with children that young, like I've got an 8 and a 10-year-old, for them to be able to care for themselves while I'm working, they can come home from school. That's not a possibility. And, childcare's, I don't have any family here. My eldest has major anxiety, so I can't send her to an after-school care because it's just too difficult. And then trying to find a job as a single mum, well, is that not even as a single mum? And there's in my area, sometimes you're looking at 400 or 500 applicants for for office work. So yeah, it's not easy. It's taken a toll on my mental health. The anxiety, the worry at night. When you're lying in bed worrying about, caring for your children. And I am lucky. They do have their dad's very, he will help where he can, but I've got, most of the responsibility. So this sort of falls on me, and it's quite, I find it really insulting, some of the comments I read about people on Jobseeker. Oh, you can get a job, it's easy, or you're bludger or whatever, and everyone's got their own situation, everyone's got something different going on.
Sorry, Katie, can I just ask you I'm just going to see if Jeanette can mute. Jeanette, can you mute?
Oh, hang on, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, Katie, I was finding it harder to hear you as the noise got a bit louder. Apologies.
That's okay. Yeah, so yeah, everyone's got their own, individual issues, and so yeah, from my point of view, it's such a young age for the youngest, for them to be just suddenly put onto Jobseeker, where your situation's totally different. I know that we don't have to have apply. Oh, she's on the game. We don't have to apply for as many jobs, and we don't have to work full time. I understand that, but even so, it's the rate is just crazy. I've been lucky enough to recently get a job a couple of weeks ago, so but even then the top-up payment is very small. So that's kind of my take from it, my situation.
thank you. And thank you so much for sharing, and you did really well.
Thank you. I'm like glad it's over.
Thank you.
And thank
If
you
it's
for what you're
okay, you
doing.
might come back and ask a couple of questions after Lauren's made a contribution. I've certainly got a couple of questions.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Lauren.
Yeah, hi, I'm here. I feel like I'm being called up for an English book report.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So I'll start off by saying I'm calling from the ancestral lands of the Gorong people, and I acknowledge we live on stolen land. My ex-partner and I moved up to Gladstone from Melbourne in February 2020. The lockdown started in March. Our move was really stressful and it had hurt our relationship, and the lockdown did very little to salvage that. So we were kind of stuck together in a enclosed space, and we really didn't like each other much at that point. In August, she left to go back to Melbourne, and it's left me here in Gladstone with the house that she chose, which is big enough for 3 people, and the lease is left with me to deal with on my own. More than 70% of my fortnightly pay is going into paying the rent in this place. I've quit taking my antidepressants and my hormone replacement therapy because medication is a luxury I've just had to forfeit to keep the roof over my head. The last few days of my pay cycle usually are just me not eating at all. I expected to look for work here, but Gladstone, one of the main reasons we moved here was it's closer to my kids, and I'd just been diagnosed with PTSD, and I wanted some time to focus on me, and I knew the job in Gladstone weren't great. So it was a chance for me to be with my family and not worry so much about that looking for work thing. And that's really bitten me in the ass right now. So I've gone and personally introduced myself to the reverse marketer at my job network, and for a while there I was like popping in once a week. Even though the offices are closed, I just didn't want them to forget about me. But there's just no jobs going here at all. Like every month I'm applying, I reapply for all the big stores, Kmart, Target, McDonald's, Coles. Like I'm constantly reapplying for all of them. And then every 3 or 4 weeks I'll go around and print out some resumes and just cold canvas. I get nowhere. I have criminal record that's taken away all my ability to use all the past experience I have to get future jobs. I can no longer work in my chosen field, and that makes me essentially useless in the workforce, as I'm now close to a 40-year-old unskilled person. I'm missing 2 of my 4 front teeth because in my previous life, routine care was low on my list of priorities. That is also a decision that is biting me in the ass. I don't ever have hope of getting my teeth fixed. This changes what food I can eat. Sorry. While we were getting the full COVID supplement, despite living in a hostile and tense situation with my ex-girlfriend, at the very least, I experienced what it was like to have a few months without worrying about money. First time ever. I lost weight. I was able to build a healthy routine around waking up and exercising, and I was able to afford food that isn't microwave meals. Yeah, I'm done. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for sharing it, and you don't be sorry for getting upset. It sounds like you're having a really hard time. And are you able to access some support?
It's like the work up here. It's quite limited. I have found a place that does free food and stuff, but yeah, yes, I have some support.
And some emotional support?
Not really, but yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. I'm so sorry to hear of your circumstances. I can understand why it's difficult to share, and it does help us understand the impact these decisions are having. And so thank you so much for sharing is in terms of then the what you'd like to see the government do. And I'm presuming you're supporting the campaign to raise the rate to $80 a day.
Absolutely. Oh, I could get very angry about the government if I started talking about that. Yeah, I support the campaign. I'd just like our government to actually see us as humans and just a very basic dignity would be fantastic.
Can I ask, in terms of, you've obviously been very proactive in reaching out to your job active provider, and it sounds like you haven't been getting much support. Is that?
I feel like they were supporting me. I just don't think there's work here to be gotten. I think like the person that I was working with directly, they seemed quite happy to be working with me, and they were saying stuff like, I can work with you, you have the right attitude, all that sort of patronizing bullshit. But yeah, it hasn't gone anywhere. And I know from my own experience, like I'm seeing no new jobs being advertised. That's why I cold canvas. I just don't think there's help for them to give.
Yeah. Thank you. Katie, can I ask you, in terms of the being forced onto Jobseeker off parenting payment single, that was a change that was made in 2006, going on 7. And then, sorry, 2006, and then the Gillard government then changed it so people that were grandfathered were then pushed on to the lower payment of it was then New Start. In terms of the payments, would it make, obviously we want to see an increase in Jobseeker rate, but would it have made a substantial difference to you if you hadn't been kicked off parenting payment single onto the Jobseeker rate?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, huge difference. Huge difference. I mean, I knew the change was coming, and you try to prepare as much as you can. I went to TAFE, to try and qualify myself better, and it would have made a huge difference. It was just such a anxious time, knowing that was kind of over my head, and panicking, going, what am I going to do? And hearing all sorts of awful stories from other single mums on Facebook groups and things, and okay,
thank you. And Jeanette, it sounds like Centrelink, when you said you weren't paid when you're in hospital, it sounds like Centrelink, was it them that dropped the ball or your employer?
Because I've used all my sick leave, because that was the second time I had been in hospital that year. So my employer had done everything they could do with, like, I've used all my entitlements, all my sick leave. There wasn't anything left. I had turned 60, so there's no income protection on super, and I would suggest everybody check their super, because that just hit me blindsided, because you paid a bit of insurance on your super and that, and to be told you're over 60, so you don't have income protection. So the only place I could go for money was the Centrelink, and but when they only give you sick benefit if you're working and not receiving money. Once you are made redundant, then you have to go on to, which was New Start, now Jobseeker. So there was that gap as well between one and the other. And then there was a big thing about getting my healthcare card as well. So medication, because I couldn't do that. Then they worked it out that I had earned. Don't ask me how. They said I had owed this amount of money, and so they worked out when I could get paid. So it's it wasn't robo-debt, it was prior to that. They had taken what my income was and what my taxation rate was.
Yeah.
And then I didn't get any money because of that as well.
Yeah. Okay, we'll follow up. We need to talk to you some more and follow up your particular circumstances. I'm not promising we can help, but we can try.
I don't think you can, because I understood what they were saying. It just seems so like, being an older woman and, the part-time and the raising children and not having the super and, having a small mortgage. I just seem to be in that stereotypical older woman at risk of homelessness, at risk of couch surfing, the whole gamut.
Yeah.
And
I
how did this
appreciate what you're
happen?
saying. I appreciate that, and that
I don't
think
want it
you're
to happen
right.
I don't want it to happen to
exactly.
other people.
And that's what I think we also need to follow up, is the broader issue of how people are getting caught this way in that classic scenario. So we need to deal with that, but also there's issues around your mutual obligations, which I think sound really sus. So we'll make sure we reach out and see if there's anything we can do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Jeanette and Katie and Lauren. We really appreciate you sharing your experiences with us. Can I now invite our last group, which is Tom, Bernadette and Laura. Okay, I can see Tom, Laura and Bernadette. There we are. Okay, Tom, can I invite you to make your contribution?
Yeah, sure.
And share your experience.
Thank you. So I'm a 25-year-old university student, currently studying a Bachelor of Social Work honours. I've been on youth allowance for around 6 years accumulatively. So youth allowance has allowed me to go through university with much less financial stress than I would have if I wasn't on government assistance. It affords me the opportunity to work less hours at my casual job, which means I have more time for on and off campus university study. So it's very important for my life and very useful for me. However, that was when I was, 18, 19. So as I've gotten older, my cost of living has increased. So with more responsibilities like car insurance, petrol, internet bills, groceries, a girlfriend, just to list a few examples. So while youth allowance does support me financially, it's by no means enough to live comfortably with. So for example, when the COVID supplement was introduced last year, I was able to have some savings for the first time in a very long while. So the last time I had a substantial amount of savings was when I was, or any real savings, was when I worked 2 casual jobs, one during the day and one during the night, at a period in my life when I was between degrees, so when I wasn't receiving any payments. But since the COVID supplement has been cut back, I've had to sort of take from the savings that I was able to build and maintain during that brief window when the COVID supplement was introduced, or rather increased. So now I'm very quickly getting closer to where my finances were at again before the COVID supplement was introduced. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Bernadette?
Hello. Thank you for allowing me to share my story, and thank you. Look, my story is most of the time I've generally worked. Unfortunately, last July, I had to leave my job due to health conditions, not due to my own making. You know, I've been diagnosed with complex PTSD, and I also have rheumatoid arthritis. So I jumped through all of the hoops. I left my job and I jumped through all of the hoops. And how I feel is when I'm dealing with the Centrelink, well, it's not a Centrelink, when I'm dealing with the office, the social services office, absolutely judged and disbelieved, treated like a second-rate citizen, you know, asked questions in a rather demeaning manner. You know, like I'm a person that has worked, and I can assure you that if I was able to work, I would be working. You know, and I find it really, really, really rude, really defaming of these officers to treat people the way that they do. We're not in there because we want to be in there. You know, I'm not on the unemployment, the job seeker, because I want to be in there. I too applied for the disability pension, and I too got knocked back because I didn't reach the 20 points. I was told to reapply.
Yeah.
But to reapply, I need to go back through the whole circuit all over again, which means going to more specialists, more doctors. All of these cost money. We get given a healthcare card. In the area that I live in, I'm lucky if the healthcare card, my general doctor bulk bills. To go to a specialist like a rheumatologist, a psychologist, psychiatrist, you're looking at hundreds of dollars, and that's your gap fees. And then, you know, when your medication plays up with you, then you've got to go to other specialists which look at your liver, and that's hundreds of dollars. So it's, I don't understand how the government can treat people the way that they do. No, when I pay my rent, because I don't have a mortgage, so when I pay my rent, I have $70 a fortnight to survive as well. And I live, it's a 90-kilometre round trip from town. So for me to go to a doctor is a 90-kilometre round trip. So I have to try and get all of my appointments on the same day too. But then with the complex PTSD and the rheumatoid arthritis, it knocks you out of the water. You're gone. Sometimes I can't get in there, and other times when I do, then you're knocked down, and that's because I can't afford the petrol. I can't afford trips into town backwards and forwards. You know, the food, the eating, the electricity. There are supports where I can go and have meals cooked in church kitchens and whatnot. Or I can get, I think it's second day breads and fruits. The problem for me is that also involves a 90K trip to go and get it. Now, if I can't afford a phone, then I can't meet my mutual obligations. If I don't have a car and I don't have petrol, I can't meet those mutual obligations. So to have those two things just about takes out any kind of money for food, let alone buying medications and going to specialists. You know, we're worthy people. We're not choosing to be unemployed. And I don't believe that we should be treated like that, you know, and my mental health, complex PTSD stems in many shapes and forms in mental health. And sometimes I can't even get out my gate. I can't get out my back door because the world's too big. And they say, get a public transport. I can't get public transport. There's people on the bus. You know, and so what was it? Oh, so with the disability pension, I was diagnosed, my diagnoses, they're lifelong illnesses, they're permanent. So the government doctor said that I can work 11 hours a week with my two illnesses, and sent me off to a disability unemployment service. Now, with that, because of the medication that I take for my rheumatoid arthritis, I'm not meant to be in the sunlight. My joints and limbs don't work a lot of the time. And then if you pull in the complex PTSD, it's very, very hard to find something for me to do. And when I went to the Centrelink office, sorry, it's not called that, but that's the old name I know it from, they told me, we don't care what you do, go and roll some pamphlets. Now, I'm not afraid to roll pamphlets. I'm not afraid to clean toilets. I'm not afraid. But I find it very, very degrading. You know, I don't think people deserve to be treated the way that we get treated. And I don't believe that children deserve to grow up in poverty. You know, people deserve a life. We have a Charter of Rights for the child. And I had to bring a daughter up on the sole parent pension myself. And I know that when that was the case for me, and it was many years ago, I wasn't able to meet the rights of that child, that charter. And it was due to the regulations of the government and the payments. So, look, I could talk for a long time because I've just discovered my voice, because I've been quieted in it all my life. I've just discovered my voice. And it's about justice. So thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your experiences. And I'll come back and ask you a couple of questions after I've invited Laura to share her experiences, and then I'll ask you all some questions. Thank you. Laura? You're on mute if you're talking. Laura, are you there? While we're seeing if we've got some technical problems with Laura, perhaps I'll ask Tom and Bernadette some questions while we see what's happening with Laura. I'll just say, Laura, if you're having problems, pop something in chat and we'll see if we can fix it. Bernadette, can I go to the issue that you were talking about, and you said that you've only got $70 after rent. That would include also trying to pay for your cost of medications.
That's $70. So that $70 is inclusive of everything that I have to pay for everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only bill that I get paid that leaves the $70 is the rent.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms then, do you find that you go without some of your medication?
Yeah, absolutely. Go without medication, go without food, and go without leaving the house to try and save the dollars to be able to afford the medication. You know, so it's someone was talking about cooking a meal for 7 days, I'm queen of it. You know, I can cook one meal, and because I live here solely, I will eat it for 7 days. The same thing, because that's what I do. And, you know, I'm not complaining about that. That's just what I do. So medication is hard, and more so the specialists are the ones which you miss out on going to.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you'd need room. I'm presuming you have a rheumatologist, and you need specialists for your complex PTSD.
I do both. Yeah.
And what would be, and sorry if I'm being a bit intrusive, but
no, you're right.
Tell me to bug off if you don't want to answer. But in terms of, you mentioned your gap fees are huge, and I know that they're, you know, all the specialists, I don't know if anybody's got any specialists that bulk bill. So what would be the gap that you need to meet in fees if you actually get to be able to get access to a specialist?
Look, particular specialists. So the rheumatologist is probably the cheapest. So your gap would be around $110, but your liver doctor, that's sitting around $240 to $270. And they will not see you. And I've even rung them and begged them and explained my circumstances, and they've told me we are not a bulk billing service. So your psychiatrist and psychologist, look, you're looking at lots of money. You're just looking at lots of money, and there are supports. You can use, if you're lucky, you can hook in through lifelines and through the mental health services. But unfortunately, they can only help you for as much as they can help you, and then they need to set you onto the street to do it yourself again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. It's really important for us to understand the impact this has. Tom, in terms of your meeting need or inability to make ends meet on the low payment, what are some of the things that you find that you have to skip in order to make ends meet?
I find like, I'm privileged enough right now where I don't have to skip anything yet, but if it keeps going the way it's going, I will get to a point where like I have such a low amount of savings that I will have to. So right now I'm lucky enough to not have to.
Right. Okay. And in the past, before the supplement came in, how was life on the payment prior to the supplement?
It was very sort of stressful in that you'd have to constantly be thinking about money is at the forefront of your mind most times. You know, you're thinking, okay, I'm buying this, can I afford that? I'm buying this, can I afford that? You know, you really have to plan a lot ahead of time, I suppose. Yeah.
Again, being really good at budgeting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, Laura, we've managed to connect.
Yeah, look, it wouldn't let me join with you, so I've managed to get on without it, but it was just giving me the spiel the whole time. So anyway, I'm here.
Okay. Thank you. Can I invite you to make a contribution?
Yes, definitely, and I really want to acknowledge all people who have gone before me with their experiences, and I've just, you know, it is kind of overwhelming, and I feel for each and every one of you. My story is I'm 62 years old, and I last worked full-time when I was 58. I'm of good qualifications. When I went to Centrelink, they were like, yeah, you're job ready, you're this, you're that, you're good. You just go and look for a job for a while. And then after 3 months, they started paying a bit more attention. The person assigned to me changed my resume. She said, "Oh, we need to make it look better, read la 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 la," and she did that on her computer, so that now, you know, when I send it through, and the online version has got them on it, not me. And when I showed it to a couple of agencies, they all showed them both. They go, "No, it's better the way you had it before." So it was a bit of a waste. And then Jobs really left me to do my own job searches until I think, I don't know, it might have been 12 months. And they said, I've got to go and do a course. They put me on a business course, business studies, that was for entry level, and I did bookkeeping at commercial college when I was 14. Started working when I was 15. I've worked in industry for all that time. So it's pretty much a waste of my time, but I had to do that in order to meet the requirements, what was new stuff then.
Yep.
Now, this is my third round of a stint of unemployment in probably the last 10 years, and it got harder and harder every time. I've had to spend my own savings. It happened just after a divorce that I then had to, I was made redundant about 6 months later. And I had to use my own, that time, the second time, I had to use that savings from the settled house prices skyrocketed to the market at that point, and obviously needed another job until I could enter. I used that money to, and I couldn't get Centrelink. So I did actually get another job then. And I was done in 58. So I had to spend all the savings that I had before I could apply for Centrelink. And on a mortgage, I pay a mortgage, so I haven't been able to get any rental assistance for the whole time. And so I've had to pay it myself. And I actually asked at Vince Connolly's office, I'm in Perth, one of the local ones here, why I'm not entitled to the same allowance that a rent gets. They didn't have an answer to start with. The third time I spoke, I was told that I can tell you that right now. It's because you're getting an asset. These people that are renting haven't got anything. And I said, so I've got an asset there for.
We've lost Laura, I think.
Yes, it might.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
better
there's,
turns off her
oh,
video.
Laura, we lost you. Your connection's very bad.
Maybe if you turn
Sorry.
off your video, it might help.
Yeah. Laura, if you turn off your video, I think that'll help with the sound. There we go.
I would like to run. I've tried to turn off the video.
Yeah.
Are you hearing me now?
Yeah, that is actually better. Yeah. Yeah. So
Oh dear.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So
And my daughter's just had a liver transplant. She's got chronic illness. So this has been another issue that's been there along the way, all along, because she was diagnosed with 3 different autoimmune diseases in childhood. She actually has we're very blessed that she has just had the transplant and it's going well. She's still in hospital. So that sort of really is some good news. but it doesn't help out financially, and she's had no help financially, and I can't get any. I've got about $50 a fortnight after I pay my rent, my mortgage. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Oh, good. I thought I'd better check.
Yeah.
And it's going to be worse, obviously. The day that I heard the announcement of what the rise is going to be, I actually had a bit of a breakdown. I broke down, and I don't think I was alone. I think there's a lot of us that did, because up until then we had some hope. We felt that we were going to get a substantial assistance because everyone is crying out for it, even the corporates know. And yet we got this kick in the face with sand, basically. You know, and I'm very angry now, and I'm getting very loud. I was at the Centrelink office this afternoon, and I was spoken down to. It's like there's this wall of blank, no emotion. It speaks to you like a robot. It overspeaks you if you know, giving them information they don't like, they'll just override you. It's disgusting, and you feel really, really bad when you leave. And you almost feel like giving up. I gave up looking for work, and I volunteer with Vinnie's now. And through that, I've got 5 paid hours a fortnight every second Sunday, and I manage the shop on a Sunday. That's $22.95 an hour. It's unbelievably low in my book. And now that I've taken my sick leave, I get more than that because I get the Sunday rate, but that's the base rate. Even though I'm in charge and I've got volunteers working under me. Now, volunteers, a lot of them who are there through a mutual obligation are all in similar situations. Everyone's struggling. We don't get petrol money to get there and back. That's got to come out of our meagre rations. You know, that I must say to the lady looking for clothing, we've got brilliant clothing at Vinnie's, and they will give you, if you call the emergency services number, they can give you vouchers to go in and spend at Vinnie's on clothing and other household goods that you're in need of that are good quality and good price. There's people just are addicted to op shopping because it's so good. I have to let you all know, utilize it. And utilize those emergency services because they will give you vouchers to spend in the shop, and they'll give you food vouchers, etc. But I've only used them once. They did tell me that I still had some nice things here that I could sell. That was a bit offensive, I'm afraid. But, you know, I still got some help. I've got strata fees, I've got rates, I've got trying to hang on for dear life to my private health because I've got hip, you know, problems. Arthritis is creeping in, and it's happened to all of us. There's people that work for mutual obligation. They get the bus in the heat of the day, and they've got breathing difficulties or other joint problems, and you know, we have to nurse them along if they're working for us and not pressure them too much. And it's just not fair how people are treated. And they're not sent on courses that are relevant. And also when I was at the course, someone was going, oh, the boss is in today. And then we all went, oh, that'll be the 4-wheel drive Porsche that's parked in the driveway. That's what's happening. The people getting the government contracts, and that's including the employment agencies, they wanted to know when I started getting paid work at Vinnie's, they wanted all the details, and they wanted that so they could claim a payment.
Yeah.
I'm angry, and I want to march, I want to yell, I want to scream, I want to throw mud.
I can totally understand the anger, and I think everybody.
And the parking at the hospital, I'm having to pay at the moment. I've tried everywhere. There is no way under these circumstances. There's a few, you know, cancer treatment and dialysis, And if you need a 24/7 carer for dementia or something, you can get a concession. That's the only parking concession at the hospital. So if you're a high-end user, you know, you're really too sick to be using public transport. There's lots of issues around that as well. I could go on and on. A lot of people have covered a lot of things. I'd like to back them all up. And I just don't know what to do. I'm gobsmacked.
Yeah, thank you. I think everybody, again, you've everybody else is gobsmacked as well. I certainly was. I absolutely couldn't believe it when I heard the measly $25, $3.57.
It's
I was
insulting.
absolutely
it's devastating.
exactly.
What they've done, and since then, I think the anxiety combined with the budget, I'm losing more weight now. I'm really, you know, my health, my mental health, and I have got a mental health plan in place, but I can't cover the gap.
Yeah.
You know, and I've mentioned this to Connolly's office as well. She was going to send me some stuff, but I haven't got it over a week later.
Yeah.
I think they've sort of believed their own bullshit for too long. They think that there is something there for us, and then oh no, there isn't actually.
No, exactly. Exactly.
Exactly. There isn't. I get pharmaceutical and I get power supplement, and that's all I'm entitled to. It's all my daughter's entitled to through all her illness, and she's also had to keep looking for work, and I've had to take over and talk to her employment providers and tell them to leave her alone and to read the notes before they phone, because they don't read the notes. They don't get that she's very, very sick, you know.
Yeah, she's in hospital with a liver transplant, for crying out loud.
Yes, well, she wasn't, you know, 6 months ago. You have to be very, very sick before you get an organ transplant. It takes a long time. It's taken from her childhood to degenerate to this point. So there's been obviously a few years, the last few years, she hasn't been able to work.
Yeah.
And she was working and studying and doing what she could before that.
Okay.
And she gets discriminated against because every time someone thinks you've got a liver transplant, well, you must have had a bad lifestyle, you know. There's all sorts of discriminations and judgments going on out there. I faced judgment. You know, I had to tell the nurse at the hospital or the doctor to stop judging my daughter about her request for more pain medication, for goodness sakes. And she's terrified of becoming addicted to painkillers because she's faced with that and she doesn't want that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for
my input.
Your input, and well,
thank
also
you for the opportunity.
But also, I was watching the chat while you were talking a little bit, and people were saying, "Good on you," and get angry, and were supporting what you were saying. I think you've been voicing what a lot of other people feel as
We're
well.
all feeling the same things, and I feel for everyone and all the others out there. It's cruel.
Thank you.
And what's going to become? Where is this leading? What's going to happen to us all?
Yeah, that's
it. That's the big
at
question.
The heart of why we're trying
What's
to
the big plan?
Get a significant increase into the Jobseeker payment.
Exactly. It's got to be a real, you know, it's got to be functional, you know.
Yes,
actual,
exactly.
Meaningful.
Exactly. And it's, I think it was Jaden that said a livable.
Yes,
it has to be livable.
It has to be livable, and the same as the jobs need to be living wages. The industrial regulations that are being changed are just killing us.
Yes,
and that's a huge problem.
That's a whole nother issue. And as somebody raised, we haven't really. We've been touching. Somebody in chat just raised the fact we haven't really touched on the housing crisis.
Housing, yes.
And
what do you do when you?
And although we have, in a way, in that, you know, when people have been saying that you you know, after paying their rent or their mortgage, they've got so little left, and that
Exactly.
for me also highlights the
Exactly. I'm going to be down to $100. I'm going to be down to $20 a month after I pay my mortgage. I mean, a fortnight plus the $135 that I earn a fortnight.
Yeah.
So that gives me $155 for everything else that I've got to live on in that fortnight.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We were going to go to a little bit of an open mic, but because we've had such valuable input, we've gone a bit over time.
Yeah.
Quite a bit over time. I will admit. So if people are okay, I'll move to wrap up. I really, really appreciate the depth of what you have shared with us. It's absolutely invaluable for us to hear what this means to people, what it means, that the impact on your lives, so we can share that. The legislation is coming to Parliament next week, because, as you know, the payment goes back to $40 a day on the 1st of April, and next week's the last sitting week of Parliament. The week before that, the week after, is estimates, which I'll use to also ask the department some more questions, because we had half an hour to ask the department all the questions this morning, which obviously was not adequate time. The fact is, we are going to keep campaigning. We all have to keep campaigning so we get a real increase, because the government, by increasing the supplement, by doubling it, showed exactly that they know that $40 and $44 is totally inadequate to try and survive on. We're not even talking about livability. We're talking about survival, and it's really, really hard. So we will keep campaigning. I know that you will all keep campaigning and coming up with innovative ways to get the message across. But I give you my word that we will fight our hardest we can next week on this issue and share your experiences, and we will continue to. So thank you very much for, once again, to our panellists for sharing your experiences. I did see a lot of other comments coming up in chat, so thank you for your contributions, for those that weren't on the panel but that have been watching and engaged, and obviously heard what people were saying. And I'm sure a lot of what people were saying was echoing other people's experience as well. And there were some repeated themes that we keep coming up: people not being able to eat properly, the housing, not being able to get the medical support you need, going without medications, having to go without your car. The issue around not being able to socialise, I think, also is really important, and I'll make sure I highlight next week and how that impacts on people's emotional and social wellbeing. So thank you all very much for participating, and for those that came on to listen, thank you very much for caring and for paying attention. Please keep paying attention. We have to deal with this issue. Thank you. And can I just do a quick shout out to Lucy and Grace, who helped at fairly short notice to put this together, and they will have been in contact with our panellists, so you'll know who I'm talking about. For those that everybody else listen, they're two of my hardworking staff that helped pull this together. And also to the Unemployed Workers Union, thank you so much for the support you've given us, but more importantly, the support you give to all those people that are looking for work and trying to survive on the pittance that the government pays when they're not paying the supplement. Thank you very much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.